Hi, I'm Steven and I like to make cardboard costumes and props. Today I'm making a TV man mask from Skibidi Toilet. Let's get started! I broke the template into 4 groups and I'm going to start off by working on groups 1 and 2. After I printed everything out, I cut and taped all the pages together until I got one big sheet. Each group turns into a big sheet, so you're going to end up with 4 big sheets in total. After groups 1 and 2 were taped together, I cut around each individual piece until I had a nice little stack. Each piece was taped onto corrugated cardboard, with the exception of any piece that was labeled decorative, and I'll talk about those decorative pieces later on. But for everything else, I used a craft knife to cut down all of the black lines. That includes the cutouts on the piece labeled bottom front. I made sure to label all of the pieces, so for the piece that's labeled screen, I cut out the inner shape first and then all around the outside. I really took my time with the rounded corners on the screen, and it was super satisfying when the center popped out. Alright, let's talk about groups 3 and 4. Once again, I taped together the pages to make 2 big sheets, and then cut out all of the template pieces before taping them onto more corrugated cardboard. These 2 groups had pieces with a lot more decorative cutouts, so it was definitely time consuming, especially the piece labeled back top slanted. Oh my gosh, this piece took a while to cut out. But if you're following along and don't have a lot of time, cutting out all these thin rectangles is completely optional. The reason I cut them out was because I wanted my TV head to look realistic, and all these rectangles really help make it look like they're the air vents on the back of an actual television. So I sucked it up and I cut them out and popped out each one of the tiny slivers until it looked like a vent. And yeah, after hours of cutting everything out, it was time to assemble. I started with the pieces from groups 1 and 2, lined up the screen, sides, bottom, and top, and hot glue was my best friend when assembling. I added it along every single seam and held the pieces in place as the glue dried. This goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, just in case anyone is following this tutorial. Some of the pieces need to be trimmed to fit. You're definitely not going to get a perfect fit on the first try because some of your lines might have been cut crooked. You might have cut on the inside of the black line for one piece and the outside for the other. Too much glue in one section could have thrown something off, whatever. Stuff happens, so don't feel discouraged if you have to trim these pieces a little bit. I definitely did. Anyway, after the screen and the sides were complete, to finish the front half of this mask, the next thing I did was glue on the piece with the 2 little cutouts. It's labeled bottom front on the template. To give it some 3-dimensionality, I glued scrap cardboard to the back of the piece to cover up the holes, and that just makes it look a little bit layered and to give the piece some depth. I also glued the thin rectangle labeled back top to the back of the top, before I moved on to assembling the side panels. The sides are 3 layers, so I took layer 3 and glued it onto the center of layer 2, making sure it was lined up with the air vents. I flipped that piece over and glued layer 1 to the bottom of layer 2, making sure the side edges lined up. See, when you flip it back over, you get a side panel with 3 different elevations, and it just makes it look a little bit more 3D. I did the same thing for the other side, and then used more scrap cardboard to block out the air vents. Once the side panels were complete, I moved them off to the side to make room for the big air vent panel. All I added to this panel was to glue a big piece of scrap cardboard to the back of the air vent, just to cover up all those thin rectangles. Super easy. However, the tricky part is next. I lined up the big air vent panel with the 2 sides, taped them together, and folded the sides down to make kind of like a little table. This took some wiggling, but as soon as I got it together, I quickly added the back panel and used more tape to hold it into place. After a few seconds, it was stable and secure, so I could flip it over and add hot glue along all of the inside seams. I let that dry and then was able to remove the tape. I taped and glued on the piece that is titled Bottom Back Slanted, and followed the same process for the back bottom, and that finishes up the second half of this TV. So at this point I had the front section with the screen and the back section with the air vents. A little tape held the 2 halves together, so I can glue some scrap cardboard over the seams on the inside of the mask, and the mask is now together. I added tape along every single seam on the inside of the mask to help cover up any of the gaps between my crooked cuts before gluing on the last corrugated cardboard piece, which is labeled bottom side. And before you think I forgot, remember the decorative pieces I mentioned earlier? I cut them out of flimsy poster board and glued them around the sides of the screen so they could act as a little decorative frame. I also covered those corners with a little bit more poster board so the corners could look nice and neat and clean. And with that, the TV was completely built. Time to paint. Everything, including the inside, was painted with black craft paint. Literally everything. No other colors, just black. It was kind of hard to get every nook and cranny painted, so if you're planning on making this mask for yourself, use spray paint. It will probably work so much better and so much faster than craft paint, but you know, you do you and use what you have. Once all that black paint was dry, I moved on to the screen. The screen that I used is just some mesh fabric that I had laying around, but you could use an actual screen like from a screen door or a window, white fabric, plastic mesh, perforated vinyl, or anything else that you could see through. However, TV Man doesn't have a screen, he has a static screen, so to get that static effect, I painted white lines all over the front of my mesh, then added some gray lines, and then a few black lines before taking a bigger brush and painting everything with a light layer of white to prevent the screen from looking too streaky. After that, I hot glued the screen to the inside of the mask and used white glue to glue a paper face to the front right in the center. And yeah, I think it's time for the glamour shots. So there you have it, the TV Man mask from Skibidi Toilet made out of cardboard. I know the mask kind of seems like a big old box, but it was actually a challenge for me to come up with the template so you guys could follow along. I'm happy with how it turned out and I really hope you guys like it. If I ever plan to make another one, I think I'd size it down by 10%. So if you're printing it out, feel free to decrease the size by 10% if you want to make one for yourself. Oh, and visibility is really good in this mask. Anyway, feel free to drop a like and subscribe for more cardboard shenanigans, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye-bye!